Good afternoon, folks in Europe, and good early evening for folks if you're dialing in from Asia, and good morning to many of you in the United States. Welcome to today's HFS webcast, where we're going to talk about doing a bit more with a lot less. I'm Phil First, I'm the Chief and the CEO here. Joining with me today is Martin Malengier from Belfius Insurance in Belgium, and Chinmoy Banerjee, many of you know, one of the big thinkers in the BPM business process space, been a good friend of HFS over the years and a big personality who was also on our manifesto meeting a couple of weeks ago. So Chinmoy, and then last but certainly not least is Saurabh Gupta, my colleague, who's our Chief Research Officer here. So welcome to today's conversation. We'd love many of you to get involved and send some questions in. You can use your screen as a little panel Q&A. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Zoom at this point, so type in your questions and we'll try and get to you if we can today, if not later on. And we'll also have a recording and a copy of this presentation on our website in a couple of days' time at hfsresearch.com. Thank you very much for your participation. Now, as a former leader once said, never waste a good crisis. I think we're kind of past the crisis initially now, even though it's still spiking up and down all over the world and has some legs to run on it. You know, this is not just a crisis, but also a big opportunity for businesses to operate virtually, digitally, differently, make some changes that they may have been unable to make in the earlier days of this. So but we'll get into a bit more of that as we go through the conversation. But this is definitely the most disruptive period any of us will live through. I think 2020 would always go down as a changing turning point in not just society, but I think economically in our lives, barring other disasters that could hit us like a world war or something. And I think this will stay with us, particularly with people nervous about traveling and operating in a fairly closed model until at least 2022. I think this is going to be a long period of adjusting, readjusting, re-emerging slowly and living differently. This is definitely something that is going to stay with us. But I do hope there'll be a lot of positives that come out of this in terms of how we run our businesses. You know, some companies are working hard to survive. You know, some are struggling a bit to pivot, and some will actually just be unlucky and may have to cease existing and retransform as something else in the future. These are very different times for all of us. And but what we will see, I think, is this emergence of this whole new wave of much more digitally agile, data savvy, super energized businesses that don't rely on the legacy infrastructures of old. You know, this is a forced shift into a digital environment that we could never have envisaged before. And I think, and I'd love to hear from my colleagues as well later, but everything that, you know, dominated our world pre-COVID tended to be about battling resistance to change. But I think since then, it's about being a proponent of change. You know, if you want to be a dynamic career driver within your organization, for example, you want to be seen as somebody who can listen to what's happening in the world and drive those changes proactively throughout your organization. And that's been a big shift. And, you know, we can talk a bit more about that as we go through the conversation. But automation is absolutely native to survivors. We're operating in a digital duality. We're operating in a virtual model where you plug in and you're working for IBM, you're working for GE, you're working for HFS, whoever you work for, you are plugging into your work environment now. It is purely digital. You know, COVID has come along as the ultimate change agent in moving from, I think, a world that was struggling to change to one that has no choice but to change. And, you know, we just need to remember that eventually, you know, we will come back. A lot of this is, you know, when we get past some of the health crises that we're dealing with, this is about business. New businesses come to replace ones that went away. Sometimes this accelerates change faster that would have happened anyway. But ultimately, this is about unleashing our passion, our creativity, you know, and our talent. And, you know, we're in what I call a have-to-have economy. If you don't have something that your customers have to have, you're in a bit of trouble. And this is what everyone needs to focus on right now is what do we have to survive, to get our customers and our employees more integrated? What do we need to do that is truly essential in this market versus what is nice to have in the first place? We talked a lot about this hyper-connected enterprise over the last few years, where we saw changes from shared services and offshoring and outsourcing to basic digital 10 years ago, which was all about how do we get our customers to respond, how do we respond quickly, online in a digital format to be effective and ahead of our competition. So today's environment, which is much more about anticipating our customers' needs almost before they even know what they are themselves. However we look at this, though, we've been through 3, even 4 decades of doing things a little faster, a little cheaper, a little more effectively, moving data around the company a bit faster, but ultimately without making true underlying changes to our business processes and our business logic, we're never going to find a true value threshold that we need to cross to get to 2020 and beyond, which is where we start to talk about super intelligent digital workers. And that's very aligned to the bot factories that we're going to be talking about today, getting more into these hyper-connected supply chains, which are more important than ever in today's environment of geopolitical issues and lockdowns and opening ups of new types of trade lines and that sort of thing. So how do we get over that hurdle? How does that real change drive things? Well, we got that change. We got it in spades. That change has happened very aggressively. But I think ultimately, we've got zero choice but to address these 2 actions to really survive and win in today's environment. And the first is really to find your bottom. I like to call it, how do you devise a financial plan to survive the crosswinds of recession? And as much as we can play around with sexy terms like resilience, we can't avoid the one reality of surviving what we're currently experiencing, which is having a decisive financial plan to survive. Because without it, we'll continually panic and flounder and never be able to attack our markets with a game plan, to come out of this on top. The second thing is, we've got to discover that, chink of light to guide our organizations, to the market leadership that we crave. So once we've achieved a financial plan to survive, we're now in a position to get focused on the services and products that our customers simply have to buy, because they've got no choice. Their cores are under threat without them. That means focusing all our investments on making absolutely damn sure that happens. This is very much about finding out how to get through this. And some of us might actually realize we can't get through this. Our business isn't structured in the right way. We can't pivot fast enough. We may just be in markets and economies that can't move past this, in which case we have to make tougher decisions. But most of us can survive this. And it's really discovering that chink of light, that North Star to get us there. This really is about looking at what business areas may have increased versus those which may be falling away and making the right shifts. A lot of this as well is around digital. And, we've had to do this ourselves as a research company at HFS. This is like, what is it that your customers can buy digitally? What can you sell them digitally? How does this impact the cost model? So usually with digital products cost far less to deliver to your clients. They take far less infrastructure, and your clients can get them faster, cheaper, more efficiently than ever. So what are those products? What are those services? How can you evolve them? How can you spin them? How can you pivot them? And what types of impacts do they have on your cost models and your financial models? And this forced shift to digital is absolutely fascinating with how it's driving businesses to do many things differently. And I'd love to learn a bit more from the guys on the panels later around what can we do in this environment that we couldn't do before? And what can we not do now that we could do before? Because many companies are surprised with how much you can transition remotely using environments and platforms like Microsoft Teams, for example, and actually operating in this model. So despite all the traumas and problems of dealing in this industry, dealing in this environment, many of us have found new ways of operating. Many of us have got used to using video tech, other types of tech to get things done much faster and much smarter. We talked about phases of shock. We used to call it the paradigm shock, but I think this is now reality. But, we've come through stabilizing, we've come to realization, and we're now in an environment, I think, where this is all about unleashing people, You know, there is no written playbook or rule book for what happened, but where we go from here is about us attacking opportunities, being experimental, engaging our businesses with much more of a startup mentality, much more flexibility, much more adaptation, and much stronger appetite to drive change. And this is about a cross-pollination of roles and talent and activities between IT staff and business staff. So a lot of automation was driven at the business side of companies over the last few years. Tools like RPA, for example, allowed us to maybe bypass the technology areas a bit and get things done looking at the business process. But ultimately, you need to have a grounding between business and IT if it's going to be eventually successful and scalable and industrialized. And so being able to accept that change is a new constant is really a watchword in today's environment. But also, you know, understanding as well, what do we want to be when we grow up? You know, we had some fun reading some of the Simon Sinek focus around infinite mindsets and finite mindsets. And Lego is a great example here of a business that I'm sure we've all spent fortunes of our own savings on this lovely product. But in 2003, they thought they were going out of business. They thought the brick had become obsolete. They were divesting into things like jewelry and theme parks. They completely lost customer centricity. They were staring at the writing on the wall. And it wasn't until they started realigning with their customers, investing in a global insights group to really understand what was going on, that they realized this was much more about having a raison d'etre. This was much more about understanding, a longer term value, an infinite value that would outlast other things they did and allow them to be effective in adjacent markets and the markets they're in. And that was quite simply to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. This is what they wanted to be. Another example I thought I'd pull off today is Microsoft, which, a few years ago, short years ago, they'd become, despite being, hugely successful financially, a company that was difficult to deal with. It had gone a little bit stale. It was, racked by politics internally, and innovation wasn't quite what it was. But then Nadella comes in and he wanted to really look at renewing the company culture. So he fostered experimentation. He looked at streamlining the cross-functional teams. He dug deep into the DNA of the firm and realized they actually were founded on innovation. They were founded on a culture. And to find that again was a hugely impressive task that he pulled together. And now they had a raison d'etre of just how do we empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And so this takes us into one of the paradigms that we spoke about a lot at HFS, which is the one office. And nothing has become more relevant post-pandemic than this one office model, which is all about the digital duality of customers and employees working together in a digital setting. And that is exactly what we have today, where we can design how we want to satisfy our customers from front to back, building in a customer-centric mindset and outcomes and models across all types of organizations and all types of workers within our company, and looking at these three adages to make it happen of automation, human augmentation, and insights. And having that ability to assess customer impact can't be achieved without assessing employee impact. The millions and millions of dollars that businesses were spending on a digital customer experience are now being diverted to also an employee digital experience as well. Because how do you fully empower your employees to work in a digital model where they can support customers in the same model as well? So really having this twinning together between business and IT is helping us achieve unified outcomes and an engaging experience for customers, employees, and partners like never before. And as we ran out a study recently of over 600 businesses, we really wanted to understand, what customers are now doing as a result of the paradigm shock. And the one thing that is resonating more than anything else is this desire to drive new ways of operating in this environment to get ahead of the competition. So customers are ultimately looking at a bigger pivot. They're looking at a have-to-have change that's going to really drive the business more effectively than incremental changes that they may have been looking at previously. And then lastly, we asked them where they were looking at making investments. And now this is a shifting needle all the time, because what customers said they were going to do in the first few months may change in time, but they're looking at investing in cybersecurity because the surface area of risk in this model is certainly greater, and companies are much more concerned about exposure. We're now seeing as well a heavy focus on increasing investments in process automation and robotics. And we'll be hearing a bit more today about how you can build out a farm of bots in this environment to help us be much more effective at straight through process management and orchestration in this type of environment. And other areas where we're seeing focus is on things like AI, obviously the hybrid cloud and smart analytics as we look to do things more effectively. So in today's agenda, we're going to get into why it's so hard to scale and industrialize these activities. We're going to look at the objectives for Belfius today in terms of starting automation, developing a multi-platform environment. We're going to also talk about the partners we need to get this done, and we've involved Hexaware in this conversation today in terms of when we structure a partnership, is this about executing against just what we want, or is it a true co-innovative partnership where they're providing a lot more of the talent and strategic competency as well? So really understanding, one, how these partnerships can get us from A to B, but also from B to C down the road as we look out into the future. So I'm just going to ask Saurabh to talk a little bit about why it's been so hard to industrialize and scale these activities.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So, look, I think one thing that's become clear is that we need a new playbook to survive and thrive post this pandemic shock. If you look at this particular chart, a majority of the enterprises believe that there is a dire need to accelerate their digital initiatives. But at the same time, we are entering a recessionary economy, and very few, if any, have any funds to invest. So how do you do a lot more with a lot less? And I think that's a problem statement that we've never seen before. But that's where we need a new playbook. And I think survival is on the line. And as Phil was talking about, emerging technologies are probably the silver lining. However, the question, Phil, if you can move to the next slide, the question is, how do you get to that promised land? We can talk about automation or the AAA trifecta of automation, analytics, AI. We can talk about cloud and cybersecurity and all these emerging technologies. We have all the tools and the toys to play with. But 30% of the enterprises still don't have any plans of leveraging these technologies. Less than 1 in 4 of the organizations, enterprises that we've talked to have both business and IT working collaboratively. Less than 15%. Now, things like robotic process automation have been there for more than 7-8 years, but less than 15% have really scaled their automation initiatives. And 1 in 10, probably lower than that, have an enterprise-wide approach to using these emerging technologies. So I think while it's easy to say that, we've got to use emerging technologies to survive and thrive this pandemic shock, while it's easy to say that, there's a burning desire to accelerate digital transformation, how do you do that? It's just been proven so hard thus far. And I think the biggest challenge is not technology itself. So if we go to the next page, the challenge is about what's our strategy. The challenge is around the data. The challenge is around, we haven't solved for the talent question. And the challenge is also around execution. We've got, as I was talking about, we've got a siloed and piecemeal technology implementations. In one nook and corner of an organization, we've got some RPA going. In another corner, we've got some, machine learning algorithms being tested. And in some other part of the organization, maybe people are toying with blockchain. But how are these things coming together? Data, we keep talking about data lakes, but we actually live in data swarms. Data quality is one of the biggest hurdles. And till we solve that, I don't know how we can achieve the utopian land that we so want to get to. Talent, as I mentioned, is an unsolved challenge. We need more people who have the problem solving capability, who have a creative way of looking at problems. But how do we get that? We want data scientists, but data scientist is not a cheap skill to acquire today. And execution, very few organizations have been able to adopt this on an enterprise basis. And I think that's why we are very keen, and I'm very keen to hear from Martin, because Belfius seems to suggest, is one of the few positive outliers to this who've been able to scale up automation initiatives with Hexaware's help, obviously, and with this unique approach of Bot Factory. So, but it has been a challenge for the rest of the industry, and I'm looking forward to hear from Martin and Chinmoy to see how they overcome some of these challenges. Phil, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Saurabh. So I think hopefully we've set the scene quite well, and I'd love to get some views a little bit from Martin over at Belfius, especially if you can introduce yourself a little bit about how you got involved in automation to start with, and maybe a bit about your background. That would be a great way to begin today's discussion.
Yeah. Okay. My background. I'm already for 30 years working in the insurance business, and my background is a financial background. I've been working as a financial specialist for more than I think 20 years. But almost 10 years ago, I really changed, and I joined an internal automation team where we were trying to and Chinmoy said it, we have tried to have a kind of company approach on automating the insurance business. And the first thing we really started was, like everybody started, was about implementing a document management system, a workflow management system. But 4 years ago, we experimented and started with RPA or robotic process automation. The thing was, at that moment, Hexaware was working within Belfius Insurance, but we didn't partner with them for the RPA development. We actually tried, like everybody, I tried with a proof of concept, and really in a very, very, very traditional way. And I think we found out very, very quickly that the traditional development methods, IT methods, wasn't working for RPA. The thing is, I looked into it. If you're talking about what's the big advantage of a factory model, I always think about structure and always think about delivery. We were faced a lot with ever-changing business priorities, and we had troubles in coping with them. And we weren't able to deliver on time, on budget, and within scope. And it's due to the help of Hexaware and a kind of factory model, which I call kind of lean model, that we were able to really deliver. And actually, like the people from Hexaware know, we try to deliver 1 bot per month, and that's due to the help of Hexaware we do this.
So, in terms of the whole approach to the Bot Factory, Martin, how did you come up with that? And can you talk a bit more about how that's sort of working, what the benefits are right now to date?
The benefits today are, when I say about benefits, first of all, it's about, we're a big company, and it's about Hexaware is helping us in an organizing execution, mainly organizing execution. They help us in planning. Most of the things we do the business analysis, and they help us with the business case. They help us identifying what cases that could be automated with RPA and which are not a candidate. What they also help us is the whole process of first of all, we use the standards in documentation of the process of Hexaware. That's how it works. We use their standards. They're perfect standards. We document the process to them. We working together with them in the business, even if they're offshore. It works very well. And what we try to do is describe the business requirements, as you should do for robotic process automation, in a very detailed way. And afterwards, it might sound strange, we leave the work up to them. And they are organizing the scripting, they are organizing the testing, they are organizing the planning. And after delivery, they even are organizing the service afterwards.
Okay. So what would you say have been some of the benefits to date as you look at how this has evolved?
The benefits of the factory model, like I probably already said, it's about, especially about structure and delivery. Right. Yes, it's about delivering on time, high quality, and monitoring the running bots. These are the most important benefits. That's, like I said, we're also able now to deliver every month. We deliver a new bot process. And as we are working already for, I think, almost 3 years, we're still delivering on a monthly basis every time a new bot. Okay.
And in terms of the current environment where, we were just talking before the webinar about the fact that you're in lockdown in Belgium again.
Yeah.
Do you feel this has really hindered progress, or have you found lots of workarounds on how to assess process, engage with your partners, engage with your staff? How's that been working for you?
To be honest, we're working in a model with Hexaware that there are some people from Hexaware are on site in Brussels, and a few of them are working off site. We were working already 2-3 years like that. So the COVID situation wasn't really hindering us a lot. We're very well organized. We have Teams meeting. We have daily meetings during the business phase where we try to document the process. The people from Hexaware are also available, even there's some time difference. It didn't hinder us.
Okay, so that's good. And so you actually feel then, because of your working relationship building up to this, you already kind of understand each other, the personalities, how to operate. This hasn't hindered things. Have things actually got faster now because of this as well? So you don't feel like you have to have in-person meetings as much, and you can actually get to decisions quicker, or?
No. We didn't really have interpersonal meetings before. Well, we had a few of them, but most of them were even with Skype or Teams. So there was actually no impact, or hardly any impact on delivery or on the factory model.
Okay, interesting. Good. So certainly a unique situation then.
Yeah. No, not even that, because even now for the inflow, now for selecting new processes, even that is not hindering us. It's in this COVID situation.
Okay. And in terms of the pressures coming from your management and your team around you, do you find that's changing direction a bit in terms of what you're looking to do now? Like, have you got more pressure to get things done quicker, faster, or is focus moving elsewhere?
Well, not really faster, because like I said, we already delivering 1 bot per month, and still adding up. The pressure now is a little bit more on FTEs, because we had a focus not only for RPA, not only FTEs, but also on customer intimacy. And now we're much more focused on FTEs. There must be a really positive business case before we can select or start to automate a new process.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good to maybe hear a little bit from Chinmoy Banerjee at Hexaware. Good morning to you there over in New Jersey. Chinmoy, how are you doing?
Good, Phil. Thanks for having me. Martin, thanks for being on this webinar.
Excellent. So maybe if you can just briefly give everyone an intro to yourself and your background, Chinmoy, and I'd love to hear from you a bit around your role in Hexaware and really helping set this up, and and how unique this might be compared to what you're doing with some of your other customers.
Sure, no, absolutely. I run BPO for Hexaware globally, been here for 7 years, been in the BPO industry for, many, many more. And my other hat that I wear is one of 3 themes that we go to market with is automate everything. And I have go-to-market point for that across the world. So interesting times from an automation perspective, right? So just adding a bit of color, Phil, to what Martin explained, right? Just 2 things first, right? One is I would definitely like to echo what you and Saurabh first said, right? That everybody has tools and toys and some, right? So why isn't scaling, right? It's got to do a lot with other factors, mostly change, right? And some of them you already spoke about. I'm sure some of them we'll cover later in the presentation as well. So shout out to Belfius and Martin especially to be open to that change, being quickly failing fast initially, seeing that this model, that the traditional model doesn't work as quickly, and then pivoting to a different kind of model that is unique to Belfius certainly, but certainly also replicable to many, many other firms, right? So first, a big shout out to that, because not many firms really do that. It seems, mundane enough, but that's really the, big ticket item that is preventing many people from doing automation, right? So essentially, when we started working a couple of years ago in this bot model with Belfius, right? So what were the usual issues we were seeing in the traditional model? We saw that there was a reactive approach to automation with a lot of dependencies on business teams for idea generation and prioritization. On the support, we saw a very large window of support required because these bots were supporting critical processes in Belfius Insurance, right? So a very long 16-hour window of operations and ad hoc bot support request doesn't really lend itself to scale. Last minute run errors, code issues or challenges, there was some structure, and Martin alluded to that a few times. SLAs and KPIs weren't very concrete because there wasn't a structure to it. There was a lot of people saying it's going well, but there is risk to it. There is some dissatisfaction in pockets, but nobody was able to pinpoint it exactly, right? And I think you mentioned the resources, right? And resources remain key today more so than the past. But if you have a non-structured ramp up, ramp down schedule, you do not know how to use your resources, right? And these resources are extremely hot resources in the market today. And the possibility of losing candidates in the pipeline, becomes very large if we do not have a structure. And so to overcome all of these, we had this Agile Bot Factory approach that we've evolved such that over the last 2 years, we have developed a bot a month. As much.
So, and to add to that, we have some bots running on very, very critical client-facing programs and processes. So this is a very important issue. That also the follow-up and that is the follow-up is orchestrated also by Hexaware. It's very important.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, the 16-hour window, actually, when a bot is going down, let's say 6 or 7 in the morning, a few minutes later, Hexaware people have detected that and are already looking for a solution. Because business, like is certainly the insurance business in Belgium and probably in the rest of the world is 24/7 now. The office hours are not from 9 to 5 anymore, as we are connected a lot with all our clients in a digital way.
Thanks, Martin. Phil, back to you. I can add some more color on the Agile Bot Factory, but back to you for some follow-ups.
So getting an inundation of questions, so that's probably a good thing. Largely, a lot of them initially around the work you're doing, Martin. Do you consider Hexaware your center of excellence for this in terms of how you've built that out, and
yes,
also about the current scale of your bot farm in terms of processes covered and capacity?
Yes. Well, Yeah, what the thing is, when you have to organize something like this within Belfius Insurance, what you try to do is looking for examples. You go to webinars. You try to read what you now and then write down and so on. But the thing is, like I said, to organize this within Belfius Insurance, I actually see Hexaware actually as my center of excellence and my first partner to run this bot factory. Yeah.
Good.
Because internally we're a very, very small team, and we couldn't do what we do without the help of an external partner.
Okay.
And Phil, I can add a little bit of color on that if you like.
Sure.
So if you look at the bot factory, right, if you think about it, the various roles, right, you have the product owner, which is someone like a Martin, right, or someone senior. You have a scrum master, a factory manager, developers, testers, business personas, and so on and so forth, right? Now, Belfius or companies like that could look to, either give it out to Hexaware or companies like us, or, keep some roles for themselves, right? But essentially, what we could do is we could run all of this, as from soup to nuts or parts of it, right? But most importantly, governance is facilitated with a dedicated team, and
Yes.
it just facilitates that at the central level, as opposed to it being done in onesies, twosies. Back to you.
Okay. And in terms of the types of bots that you have been creating, can you sort of share some examples of kind of how those have taken shape? Are they reusable, versus what was already there, that sort of thing?
Sure. So I'll jump in, Martin, and please, add on.
Yeah.
So essentially, Phil, just a little bit of color. Initially, we started off with Blue Prism, or Belfius started off with Blue Prism way back in 2016, 17. And then we said, hey, can we look at other platforms as well? And we, got UiPath in. Again, this is not to say that one is better than the other, but just from a risk perspective, everybody has its own advantages and advantages. So we started using, looking at attended automation. We started looking at reusability, certainly, right? And that's how we started off, Phil, right? And then we said, hey, RPA is seemingly going on at a fair pace. Can we look at, other forms of automation, right? And Belfius already has, OCR, for example, and other forms of automation running, including platforms, right? So now what we are looking to do is, apart from just reusability and apart from, building up the bot farm, which seems to be going on well, we're looking at process discovery and mining as an approach, right? To get to the fact-based ROI pipeline, if you will, right? And get to the next level of transformation. So we are looking at process gold and Celonis as an example to aid us in that. We are looking at, ML and AI very seriously. UiPath itself has, certain functionalities, but also we are looking at building bespoke stuff using TensorFlow and Python, right? Looking at AI computer vision, conversational understanding as part of the Agile Factory. So kind of, increasing the scope of the bot factory from it being just an RPA bots to a bunch of other stuff. Martin, please feel free to jump.
No, it's okay. I too. Phil, if you're looking for examples, we were mainly focusing on COO operation, traditional one, which is claims department and policy departments. It sounds probably a bit strange, but we haven't been working in the financial department yet, and mainly focusing on really, we've been integrating, and we've been trying to implement, like I said, implement a new core system, new insurance core system. But even with that new system, there, I think, and if anybody is listening, there are really hundreds and hundreds of manual processes still that people are doing on a daily basis, and we try to tackle them one by one.
And what do you mean around the stronger focus on FTE? Is that around the business plan, or?
Yeah, no, I'll just give you an example. We have I make some publicity. Belfius have an app where you can subscribe your policy through an app. But there's only one thing: if you want to register your car on a national website, it must be done by an insurance company. This must be done manually. There is no API, or there's nothing else. Somebody must toggle in this information. Okay. What we've done is we try to integrate the whole process, also using RPA. For the moment, the bot is only running a few cases per day, but we implemented this because we wanted to have a kind of customer journey where a customer from really the beginning to the end, really registering his car and get his number plate for his car in one step. The process is there, the process is running, but still unlimited numbers. Like I said, this process we will not tackle nowadays anymore. We will tackle only the process where we can really prove that there is an FTE gain after, well, no, a return on investment on 3-4 months max.
Right. Okay. So, Saurabh, I mean, listening to this, do you find this a particularly unique approach? Is it something that you've seen before in lots of other engaged relationships?
Yeah, no, it's. I think it is somewhat unique. You know, we've seen some bot factories, primarily, I would say, in the BFSI sector. I think the couple of things that what Martin and Chinmoy have been saying, which are, you know, clearly best practices from our perspective, is you know, having a structured approach for demand intake, and then having a structured approach for, you know, releasing the bots, which is what we call the enterprise-wide sort of approach. I think that's what has been the bane of a lot of execution for RPA. The enterprise-wide approach that Belfius has taken is very commendable. I also think that, you know, the multi-platform approach, you know, there's a lot of debate around whether it's, you know, product X versus product Y. But I think ultimately, you know, we'll need to come up with an integrative approach which uses the best of multiple products, and that's pretty unique. Along with what Chinmoy was mentioning, you know, the integrative impact of multiple technologies from OCR to RPA to RDA to ML. I think we've got to realize the power of and not the power of or. You know, it's the multiple technologies coming together is when you can start to make some business impact. Otherwise, we keep you know, living in our own silos. So I think several best practices that that we've been talking about, Phil, we can see in this example.
And one thing I want also mention is that what we also try to do within Belfius Insurance, just try to create a kind of awareness to the board, awareness to executive and managers of the possibilities of automation. It's not always done within a traditional IT department, and what we try to do is make people aware that there's something like RPA, that there's something like OCR, that there's something like process discovery and process mining, and with the help of Hexaware, we try to explain to whom is interested and decision makers. We try to explain them that things are happening around us, around the world, and then that we should probably invest in that.
Yeah,
it's very important. Yeah,
Martin, thanks. So Phil, he's picked up right from your first law of robotic process.
Yes, so this is where we wanted to take the conversation, because we're getting a lot of a lot of things pile in at us. Engaged audiences I've seen here, but you know, as you look at lessons learned and where this is going, you know, we put together this kind of manifesto or whatever. Last year we had, I think, 20 of the early adopters around the table. Yes. And you know, while a lot of the benefits of RPA, for example, were that we could get a lot of stuff done without having to always involve IT. And this is one of the first times business process executives getting to design things themselves. The general consensus was that this would ultimately fail to get beyond piecemeal projects if we didn't truly work with technology to build out more robust enterprise applications and these types of things. So in your experience, Martin, how has this evolved in terms of IT and business working together, having more shared responsibility, that sort of thing?
What we tried really from the beginning in 2016 is work together with, and first of all, it might sound strange, but the interest for RPA came from not from the IT department, but within the business department. And what we do is we try to participate with and bring them in as soon as possible. And I think that's very, very important, because when you bring in RPA, the traditional, like I say, traditional IT departments are it's very, how to explain it? It's what I hear from colleagues. I'm going to explain it different. That there's a huge fight always between the RPA factory team and the IT team, and most of the reason is that because they don't understand each other, and the IT department always wants to do things in a traditional way, and you must explain them from the beginning how a factory model works and what the advantages can be of a factory model for RPA. That's very important.
Yeah, okay. So I have another question here. Maybe Saurabh would like to have a stab at this, but what is our view on automation being an augmentation of the human workforce versus just replacing FTEs?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think clearly the former. I was speaking to someone, and I think my best way is that we need to use tools like RPA to remove the soul-crushing work that we all have to do in our jobs. Versus just look at RPA as a lever to reduce FTEs. Because no matter how much end-to-end automation that we do, it will always be man and machine together. Whether it's RDA or RPA, it is not. I think the conversation around man versus machine sort of often leads to dangerous paths, often leads to more internal politics, often leads to more and more internal resistance. But I think if you were to create a business case around what can we achieve with man and machine, human augmented workforce, as the question says, I think it's a much more robust workforce, a much more robust business case for the longer term. But would love to hear what, Martin,
I would add to that, especially with attended automation, when you have an interaction, human, bot, bot, human, and so on, then you can see that it's a big advantage. The unattended one is a bit more tricky, but the attended one shows the big advantage of RPA with business processes.
Okay. And how do you kind of make the business case in the Bot Factory, Martin? Do you quantify specifically, or it gets to the point of you kind of just know what the value is?
No. First of all, what we do is, well, you know exactly, we work on a fixed base. Hexaware works on a fixed base. So we document the process, we describe the process, and then we receive a work order per process. So it's quite simple. It will cost us X euro. And how do we calculate the business case? Well, it's very simple. Like I say, we have a very good statistics within Belfius Insurance. We know how long a process takes. We know how money somebody costs. We know how many time we will win. And it's just a question of calculation. Traditional ROE calculation.
Right.
Yeah. And Phil, in case, everybody is not as sorted in data like Belfius is, which is good, but most people are not, then of course the discovery process enables us to sort that through. and figure out the actual ROE.
Okay, and then Chinmoy, how does Hexaware help identify processes that can be automated, and how do you decide where to start doing this?
Yeah, so there are various levels of assessments that we can do for someone who has no clue versus someone who has an actual idea as to where we should look for, because there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of processes, right?
Yeah.
So we have toolkits, based on the domain area that we have built over the years that we come in. But increasingly, we are trying to get that, automated as well, right? Because Martin made a very important point that during COVID, it didn't stop, right? It's only possible, obviously, because people are working from home successfully. That's okay. That's par for the course. But more importantly, the assessment and the identification process is digital as well, right? So our ability to, go into and assess by not actually being on the ground, I think that experience proved quite useful because that's true digital. You really don't have to, bother someone and take hours and hours of his time, but can come out of a business case that is machine-led rather than human-led.
Yes, and I do believe, Phil, that I don't know who mentioned it, we're already testing also with Celonis. I believe that not probably in 2020, but probably in a few years, we will use, I think, tools like Celonis with process mining and process discovery to detect more and more candidates for RPA. For the moment, it's a very traditional one. We ask people, sometimes a brown paper session, and we ask people, where do you have repetitive tasks, and we describe them. And then, but I like I said, like we were testing with Celonis, I believe in those tools. For me, they're not mature enough, and it's sometimes very difficult to connect them with our current systems. But when we have this in place, I think we'll find a way to automate more and more due to things like Celonis. I quite believe in that.
That's interesting. So as you look at process mining, and obviously that's different in that it's much more about event logs and templates, right?
Yeah.
And you evolve that from RPA. How does that work from a sort of, you're managing it as a sort of factory approach? Do you feel the relationship between RPA and process mining can get closer, or do you think
it will be appealed? Because what I understood is that in some softwares already, the process mining is built in. So I'm quite sure that whether it's Blue Prism or Automation Anywhere or it's UiPath, there will be add-ons which will deliver process mining or process discovery. I'm quite sure about that. It will be, now they're different products, but there won't be in the future. I'm quite sure that there will be add-in, and that first of all, RPA software not only be used to automate, but also to discover and to mine the processes before automating them.
Right, and does this mean you're shifting eventually more to a sort of an API model than a sort of more manual model with the processes you're looking at?
Probably, yes. Yeah, probably.
Right. And as you look at the pivot, then you're making using multiple tools and tech, and you've got your partnership with Hexaware. Are you looking eventually to maybe move on to one standardized platform, or you actually get a lot more benefit from this cocktail of technology that you're currently pulling together, best of breed for different functions?
I don't know that. It will be a joint decision, I think, between, operations and especially with some IT architects also, because when we're talking about this selection, actually from the business side, I always say we don't care what kind of platform we use, and that's actually not really the case, but it's also up to IT architects to help us with that. Because you must always have a fit with your backend system, and one system or one application is sometimes a little better than that and the other one.
Yeah, and
you have to
and Chinmoy, you work obviously with a lot of other clients as well. from a perspective of a provider like yourselves, do you find that clients are, on the whole, still looking at the best of breed individual approaches, or there's a shift to trying to get more of a commonality of platform?
So Phil, as you know, and as your data said, right, we are still, so nascent in adoption that it's kind of a difficult question to address. But on the whole, based on a practitioner view, I would still say best of breed rules. And it's still some time before people just focus on one or the other. But what is clearly evident is everyone is looking to move along the automation value chain, and certainly working integrated versus doing standalone automation. And also, adjacencies that help in this process are gaining a lot of traction. So process discovery certainly has gained traction a lot. Process mining is starting to, and obviously there are differences there, but essentially it's a continuum that is evolving quite nicely, I would say, but still multi-platform, Phil, and best of breed.
Yeah, but do you think that there's going to come a time where clients are getting tired of having to negotiate with lots of these different software firms? They just want to have one throat to choke type of thing to say, look, we need more discovery here. We need to have this ability to look at APIs here versus some traditional RPA over here type thing. Do you think there's going to come a time where customers are just going to say, look, I just want one throat to choke. If Hexaware or IBM, whoever, can provide all of this stuff, why do I need to keep buying all of these individual products? Is that the direction you think we're eventually going to go in?
Possibly. I think that's a fair possibility. But let me venture as far as that.
Right, and then obviously here's the billion-dollar question: is adoption accelerating in this environment? Well, this is no longer this environment. This is the environment we're in. This is today, right? I call it normal-ish, by the way, normal-ish. Is adoption accelerating, or is it still fairly fragmented and companies still trying to figure out what they're doing?
I think there is a lot of good intent on accelerating, given the enormous cost pressures and new ways of working that COVID has brought about, Phil.
Yeah.
And we are seeing a lot of actual traction on the ground, secular traction, but I just hope that it will continue, because as past crises have showed us that we tend to revert back to the old normal, or at least an elevated form of the old normal. So I hope that's not the case, and the acceleration that we are seeing now actually continues. We do see today a lot of acceleration, that's for sure.
Interesting. Okay. As you look at your ideal customers at Chinmay, my view is that you need to find companies who figured out, as we said earlier, they figured out their bottom. They know kind of what they need to do to survive and then win. Once customers have figured that out and they're addressing their opportunities, they're great customers to have, because they will invest in whatever they need to reach their goals, versus ones who are still kind of floating around trying to figure out what the hell's going on and where's common ground, that sort of thing. So as you look at your customer base, Chinmay, would you find it's those which are ahead of the curve, they've accepted this is the normal, and they have a plan?
Yeah, I think Belfius brings to bear a lot of those characteristics, right? Someone who's got the CEO and the CIO organization talking together. It's got, directive from the board downwards. Everybody's bought into what the automation is really supposed to deliver. And essentially someone who has actually figured out their change agenda, I would say, right? And after all of that, they're using the same metrics with their partners to achieve their goals, because we have many customers who have figured out the change agenda, but then they have a different kind of metrics when they want to implement it with their partner, right? They're still looking for the cheapest and the fastest rather than the most effective solution out there, right? So I would say Belfius ticks all those boxes, Phil, And it's a lot of evangelization, I guess, that all of us have to do in order for the market to get to that place.
Thank you, Chinmay. It's very well put. So Martin, and I know we're running out of time. We've had a long conversation about this already. Then it sounds like you guys have a plan. You know what you're doing. You know where you're going. Do you feel like you have a plan for the next couple of years in this, and you have a trajectory that is predictable, or do you feel this is still fairly choppy? And
no. Like I said, and like I think I don't know who mentioned it. What we're trying to do is now we have everything which you call it RP. Consider dropping the word robotic. I think what we have now everything which around RPA and robotics. We have it, like I said, well organized and structured, so it's okay. We have it in a factory model, and it's working very well. And as we are a financial institution, we have to have things in order before we take a next step. But next steps will be something like I said, moving into AI, machine learning, process discovery, and process mining. It will probably take us a few years, but that's the plan. Where we're going to. That's we call the flag is planted, and we know where are we going to.
Fantastic. Well, obviously, this is something unique to Belgium, and I will make that my headline today. That Belgium.
No, we're not unique. I think there are a few, no. We're not really unique. There are a few colleagues also trying to go the same way, but yeah. Within the financial institutions, we're probably a little bit ahead.
Yeah, and I think the insurance market as well, because you guys are so focused on you're so focused on sales and marketing and getting products to market as fast as then possible, whatever it needs to get there, moving ahead. So that's been very, very positive, and I think it's been very refreshing and open to hear, what you and your partner Chinmay have been talking about. So to finish up today, I'm going to ask Saurabh just to wrap up a little bit with the why, the what, and the how, which is very much Saurabh's trademark. How to achieve success in this industry, and then we can all move on with our lives and hopefully connect up sometime in a few months to see where we're all evolving here. So Saurabh, could you just take us through this?
Sure. Look, I think we've like with any initiative, I think we've got to answer these questions very crisply. And with automation initiatives, as I look back at this conversation today with Martin and Chinmay, I think what's been clear is that these three questions have been clearly answered by this Belfius journey, and that's why they've been somewhat successful. The why has to be, it's got to move beyond the rat race of a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper. We've got to look at how can we drive some meaningful change. The what really requires an integrated approach. It requires an enterprise-wide strategy, and it's not about silos fending for themselves. And the how, we've got to prioritize, talent. We've got to, in Martin's case, he's leveraging external talent through Hexaware. We've got to prioritize speed. One bot per month, and we've got to focus on execution. What's the demand patterns, how do we take it in the funnel, and how do we execute on it? And I think if we in our organizations can really perfectly answer very crisply these why, what, how questions, I think that's how we scale up. I think that's how we industrialize robotic process automation.
Fantastic. So I think from everybody here today, it's been a wonderful conversation. Chinmay and Martin from Belfius and Saurabh, yourself and myself, I've very much enjoyed this. So it's all about the insurance industry, this innovation, and obviously Hexaware. Nothing to do with Belgium then. It's I have today. But no, seriously, gentlemen, really good conversation. It's great to hear about some real innovation happening, and the fact that you're continuing your journey. That, if anything, it sounds more accelerated in the current environment. And I'd love to welcome you back, Martin, in the future to hear more about how this is all developing. So thank you all for your time on this Thursday. And, stay safe and stay sane, everybody. And we'll all get there eventually. So thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.